just want to point out, you guys stood up and clapped for Nils. It's fine, not that I care or anything, it's cool. Actually, I am incredibly boring, and so it'll be a little bit of a different talk. It's a really great way to start a talk, just say how boring you're gonna be. Doing great. I have a lot of graphs. Do you guys like graphs? We got some graph people in the, I also don't have a clicker, I just realized, so that's gonna be fun. We'll get there, we'll get there. We're gonna talk about something not so fun, a little uncomfortable, and that's why I'm just really trying to lower the expectations here. And that particular topic is a question that's been a little bit of a theme the past couple of days. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, a little bit this morning. I think you heard about it a little bit in Nils' presentation as well. And the question that we're gonna ask, and then we're gonna unpack here, is how do we move customer success from this last thought amongst the exec team to how do we move it towards the nexus of the exec team, right? And I know what some of you are thinking, Patrick, I'm awesome, right? My team thinks I'm awesome, everybody loves me, which you are awesome. I believe you're awesome as an exec, but I've got some fun data for you. These are not the graphs yet. We're gonna get to the graphs, don't worry. The first data point is, as part of my new gig, and I'll talk about that in a second, I was doing a bunch of research into what's going on with salaries, like exec salaries basically, not just like C-level, but like VP and director level salaries as well. So collected a bunch of data from about 1,000 different companies, which is something I've been known to do from time to time, and basically found, unfortunately, that when you control for engineering, which kind of skews everything off always, customer success is paid about 30% less. Yeah. You might be paid great, but customer success in general is not. And to kind of just like really kick you while you're down here, I went out to about 1,500 CEOs and founders, and I basically asked, it was a very structured research survey, hey, you got to cut an exec member, cut a member of leadership, VP level, director, who do you cut? 3 out of 5, you guys. Yeah, I'm just really excited to bring this news and be really boring. You guys have a great rest of the day. The sun's out. Go have a good time, right? The funny part about this though, and this is where we get into some graphs, there is no other data, absolutely no other data in the world of, I would argue, SaaS and software where I particularly have a lot of data. Not a single piece of data supports these opinions. Not a single one. Here's a couple of cuts. You guys want to know how much customer success influences the world of revenue per customer? Basically doubles it. Revenue per customer, double when you have customer success, even different types of customer success. And just to throw another little like curveball to you, customer success with a quota, which is like a very settled debate amongst customer success, right? Ends up having more, right? You guys curious what NPS looks like with customer success? It's down overall, just overall in the world. But customer success retains much, much higher NPS than when customer success doesn't exist, right? Expansion revenue, double when you have customer success, right? So the question when Dave asked me to speak, and I love this conference, this is my favorite conference ever. There you go. Cut that up, throw it on YouTube. Anyways, was how do we basically bridge these two things? Like how do we give you the ammo, particularly from an exec perspective? How do we give you the ammo to be really, really successful when it comes to not only defending your job, but demanding that seat, flipping the table has been talked about, but also making sure that you're seeing the wider picture. Because I think one of the issues, and I've been coaching our customer success leader at the combined company, and I'll explain that in a second, is that everyone's so heads down in doing their job that they forget that there's this wider mission that the company's going after. So we're gonna unpack that particular concept so you guys can demand the seat. Sound good? Is that cool? You guys fired up? I'm not as exciting as Nils. That's okay though, all right? Cool. So Patrick Campbell, CEO, founder of a company called ProfitWell. My background's in econometrics and math. It's code for having a lot of friends as a child. It was great. I run a company called ProfitWell. We exist basically to grow and run subscription companies automatically. Our claim to fame is we have this product called ProfitWell Metrics, plugs into your billing system, gives you all of your financial reporting for free. It's used by about 35,000 different SaaS and subscription companies. And then the way we made money is we basically built tools that automated your retention, your churn, and then also automated things like your price optimization. We're bootstrapped, based in Boston, Argentina, and Utah. I love Utah, although I have moved since, so that's a little thing that Dave's yelling at me for. And then we sold to a company called Paddle, which is a billing system, for over $200 million. So that was kind of cool. It's okay though. I still dress like this, which is basically Utah dad taking his kids to dessert. So that's the style. But Paddle does billing, a lot of automation. I'm not trying to sell you here. I'm just trying to give you context where all this data comes from and all these fun graphs that we're going to go into. So let's unpack this. Let's jump in. So the first thing I want you to kind of realize and think about, what the heck is going on with the market? You as a CS leader, you need to understand where the market's going, and you should be the one educating your team about this. Because your team really has no idea what the heck is going on. They're just reacting to these numbers not going in the right direction or celebrating the numbers going in the right direction. But the greater macro kind of environment is really, really important, especially from the customer perspective. Some fun facts. Customer acquisition cost is up about 100% over the past 5 years. And this is because everyone and their mother can start a product, right? We all can spin up a landing page, a server, start driving traffic to that landing page. And unfortunately, we haven't had a brand new marketing channel since 2015. TikTok is basically a new marketing channel, but we went from this world of new marketing channels every single quarter, Google AdWords for a penny a click, to all of a sudden having all of these competitors, all of this stuff, and just not as many places to sell it into, right? So it's a really, really big thing that your team is facing. On top of that, because there's all this stuff, like I don't know anyone who's been in the game for the past 20 years, but used to be you could throw a login screen on a database and you were looked at as like a god, right? Now if it doesn't have good support, doesn't have good design, all of these other things, it's just not as valuable. And so willingness to pay has dropped about 70–80% in the past number of years. And the thing to kind of take away here is that acquisition, so acquiring customers, that lever of growth, when you look at the 3 areas of growth within your business, acquiring customers, monetizing them, and retaining them, that particular lever is now table stakes. You need to be good at acquiring customers just to survive. That's not where growth is actually coming from. We have some data on this where we basically looked at those 3 levers. We wanted to see if we raise them by the same relative amount, what would be the impact on revenue? And we found if you increase your acquisition, so your customer acquisition volume, your lead volume, whatever it is, by about 1%, you're going to see about a 2 to 3% boost in your overall revenue. You improve your revenue per customer, your overall retention by 1%, you're going to typically see about a 4 to 8x impact. And the point isn't, hey, let's stop spending 65% of our budgets, which is really where it is, on sales and marketing. But the point is like, hey, exec team, which team influences these 2 things the most, right? That's you guys, if you didn't understand the answer to that question, all right? And so I think it's really, really important because we can all sit here and we can go, oh, poor me, like, oh no, like they're not thinking I'm valuable. And it's like, or you can just be like, hey, you wanna grow? Let's go, mother truckers, let's do this, right? And that's the biggest thing you gotta think about. It's coming from expansion, it's not coming from acquisition. That's the thing that you have to realize and really hone in on. All right, let's talk about retention. Who here likes retention? Anybody? No, okay. Here's the biggest problem with retention. There's this enormous misconception when it comes to retention in the world of like, I would say SaaS, software, subscription e-commerce, just like any particular industry. And that's this concept that if the product's valuable enough, people would stick around. Who has heard this from a product leader before or some variation of this, right? No one has heard this? A couple of people? I saw 2 hands from him. He's really excited about this, right? Yeah, PLG. Yeah, the self-serve of 20 years ago. Thanks. Anyways, so the thing that is problematic about this is it's like those little missives that aren't wrong. Like this is not wrong. It's woefully incomplete. And what I mean by that is value is not binary, right? So you've probably seen a spectrum like this before. Someone's published something like this in your world. You got your advocates on one side, you have your critics on your other side, and you got this point of cancellation in the middle, right? When we talk about retention, when it comes from a product perspective, but I also argue from an industry perspective, we often are talking about what I like to call strategic retention. And this entire world where it's like, what is the job to be done? What is the new feature? What is this thing that we're going to do over the next 36 months that is all of a sudden going to influence this particular number, right? The issue is that whether you're a product-led growth company or you're a company that's in the enterprise, there's this tactical world in the middle here. And what ends up happening in this tactical world is there's all these little nudges that can move someone from thinking about canceling to not canceling, or just canceled to coming back. And the reason I bring this up is because this is a problem for your company, this perception. 100%, right? But this is a really big problem for you. Because what ends up happening is we have this like customer success expectation death loop. Trademark Patrick Campbell. That's what I want it for. Where if you look at the life of a customer, we acquire a customer by getting the lead on the phone first. Then sales sold the customer. Then product got some sort of like excitement because all of a sudden there was some sort of like, oh, this feature is going to be so great. We can't wait to use this thing that the salesperson oversold. We can't wait for it, right? And everyone gets wins. Marketing's like, heck yeah, we created that opportunity. Sales is like, yeah, we got them to sign the contract. Product's like, we're gods. We created this cool thing. And then they go, take it over, customer success. Have a nice day, right? And then all of a sudden, because of a bunch of things, and it could be for things that are in your control, not in your control, doesn't really matter, all of a sudden that customer decides to churn, right? And that's bad for you. And the issue isn't, hey, you're not in charge of your own destiny. But the issue is if we just look at this breakdown, the expectation here is only upside, right? The expectation over here is only downside. So you are literally working from only trying not to lose, right? Where they're playing to win because that's just how it's designed, right? And this concept about churn and this concept about retention all of a sudden gets to you, and what makes this even worse is that assumes the best case scenario, right? Which probably none of you are living in, right? You're actually living in the worst case scenario. You got to lead outside of the core segments, right? You've been saying, hey, we got to go to this customer, this is the customer, this is the customer, and they're like, yeah, but this was easier to get, right? And then sales discounted the contract heavily, so the person's buying basically just because of the discount. They're not buying because they're buying the dang thing, because sales doesn't want to wait 3 months for that customer to finally come to the moment where they need your product. And then all of a sudden product, they're building for acquiring more logos because we have all of these goals, and so all of a sudden it's like, you are getting literally a terrible customer at this particular point, and then it doesn't show up because the annual contract's over here, right? And they go, how dare you, customer success person, lose that customer, right? What happened? Why did you do that? When all of a sudden it happened way over here. Anyone feel this? We vibing? Yeah? Sucks, doesn't it, right? Cool. I got a beard, so they don't really like this thing's going on. So now I feel like a stand-up comedian, which is really uncomfortable. We'll get through it together, guys. Okay. So this is up, this is up, this is up. They're getting promoted, they're getting more money, they're getting more resources. How dare you, customer success, lose that customer, right? And so we can look at this and we can have a pity party. We can like complain about it. We can go get drinks later, whatever you need to do. Or we can first educate on who owns churn. That's the first thing. In my opinion, and I would say the data supports this, you do not own churn. Product owns churn. And the reason is because customer success only lightly influences churn. I have the data. Look at that. Patrick's your best friend here. No customer success. This is gross monthly revenue churn from about 6,000 different companies. This is scalable customer success, so it lowers it a little bit. Dedicated customer success, it does lower it. It's definitely something that helps. But I would argue when you go and unpack this data, what you typically find is that the lowering of the churn is mostly because you're just cleaning up a lot of support stuff. Or you're just like, yeah, I'm not supposed to be the support person, but I'm the one who holds the relationship, so I end up like having to help. So the first thing is who owns churn, and making it very, very clear that your product friends are the ones who own churn. The second thing, demand RevOps. Who here has a RevOps team? Not enough of you. RevOps is basically marketing operations, sales operations, and customer success operations all rolled into one. If you don't have this, at least have customer success operations. But the reason is because they should be breaking out retention and lifetime value by rep, segment, engagement, et cetera. Not enough companies are doing this. But if you have this data, you can be like, hey, marketing keeps getting these crappy leads, and of course they're not retaining over here, but I can see that now, and I can actually like, again, not necessarily defend my job, but like really like support that like I'm not the reason this is happening, right? And then the final piece is flag health early. And what I mean by that is if you're in an annual model where you're not going after monthly customers, you want to be able to flag right here that this is not a great customer in terms of the personas or segments we're targeting. It was heavily discounted, so the probability that it basically churns is going to go up. And then all of a sudden when that happens over here, you're not necessarily in trouble. Make sense? Cool. And then my last one, which is my favorite one, I've been talking about this for 10 years. Just tell your team to stop discounting. I know like they're not gonna do it, but set a threshold, 20%. It does depend on your business. I have so much data on this I'm happy to share. But what we have found, and I found this definitively, when you discount over 20% of your list price, if you are not a discount brand, that's a huge asterisk, your churn does double. I've seen this in every single vertical, every single ARPU, every single ACV. 20% is this magic line. Yes, sometimes it's 25%, sometimes it's 15%, but heavily discounted customers, they're not ready to come on board. Make sense? And I will give you the data. If you haven't been able to tell, this whole deck's like, send this to your CEO and be like, give me a raise. That's basically what this deck is for, okay? All right. That being said, you don't own churn, but you should definitely partner on churn. And what I mean by that is, right now your product team is super, super focused on like, let's build the future, right? Let's get a man bun and a beard and like build the future, right? We have 2 man buns on our team, which is kind of fun, both in product. Surprise, surprise. But you want to make your organization better, right? Because if you're sitting there and you're like, well, churn's not my problem, right? You don't really look as a good leader inside your organization, right? And so what we want to do is we want to attack that particular tactical retention zone. And one area to do it, super simple, if you have a lot of monthly customers, optimize your term length, right? What I mean by that is, of course, a customer that's on an annual plan, they retain at a much, much higher rate. They actually retain at a much higher rate, about 200 to 800% higher lifetime value. And this should feel intuitive because they're making one decision every 12 months versus one theoretically every single month. But the problem is that most companies, especially those running a product-led growth framework, they're only asking someone to get on an annual plan when someone signs up for the first time, which is kind of terrible, right? Like, I don't know the actual value of your product. Therefore, like, why would I commit to a longer term, right? So just doing some basic things and going out to those customers and saying, hey, you're awesome, we're awesome. Why don't I give you this like 1 month off, 2 months off, $10 off, whatever it is for your particular organization. And then making it really, really smooth for them to basically confirm, this is great. You can go to your product team and be like, hey, I have this really cool idea. Let's do this thing. And they're like, oh, that's amazing, right? I can go build my features and I can improve our churn. That's awesome. Another big thing, cancellation flows. Not all of you have like self-serve cancellations just by the nature of your job. But I think that this type of a flow, whether you're doing dedicated support or whether you're doing something scalable with kind of like product-led growth, is really, really important. Because we have this weird belief in our industry that when someone hits that cancel button, on one side, people are like, the minute they breathe on it, we should cancel and never speak to them again, right? And on the other side, it's, hey, let's hijack them and make them call us with a certified letter. I don't know how that works, but they're gonna use the phone and the post office before they can actually cancel, right? And that one's terrible, that one's worse, that's so much worse, just from a math perspective. So what happens when you force someone to call to cancel, you will lower your churn rate. You 100% will, but you will tank your reactivation rate. So basically net over a year, it's much, much worse. But we don't want to do the former either. So what I'm a big fan of, and you can do this in a scalable manner if you're actually talking to your customers on a call, or you can do this in a very like product-y way, I love to ask these 2 questions. And what we discovered in looking at about 2 million different cancellation flows is that you essentially have 18 to 30 seconds before people get aggravated when it's a self-serve cancellation flow. First question, super obvious, but notice how it's not an open form. We're basically like, hey, make a decision. Tell us what's up. Second question, no one thinks of this. We found that this works so well. You have a customer who is on this freight train to cancel. They have made the decision. That's why they've hit that cancel button. When they look at, oh crap, why are you canceling? Yep, I hate you. And then you're like, but did you like anything? They're all of a sudden like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, there was some stuff I liked, right? And you tap into what's called the nostalgia effect. And basically what ends up happening is you stop that freight train, and then depending on these two particular answers, you can do some sort of offer, right? So salvage offers, super, super common. I'm a big fan of like 1 month free when you're in the world of SaaS. You gotta make judgment calls based on your unit economics. One big underlooked one is maintenance plans. Hey, that's really, really cool, but what if I gave you a cheap plan? We will save all of your preferences or all of your data, and then based on that, when you come back, you can just use the product again, right? I get money, it's not a cancellation, it's technically a downgrade, but it is one of those things where I can keep them kind of in my sphere of influence. Pause plans, no indefinite pauses, 0, don't do it. 30 days, 60 days, don't do 90 days unless you're in the e-commerce space, which I don't think any of you are. But make sure there's a limit. It should automatically restart. Don't try to have to resell them, because then they're confused. They're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And then don't be afraid to play chicken. If they all of a sudden say you don't have good features or you don't have good functionality, and they're not in the right target customer base, it's okay. Now, if you want to get really advanced, so we've like productized this in one of our products. What we do is we look at this data that they're basically giving here, and then we compare and contrast that in real time with engagement data, as well as like what plan they're on, segmentation, et cetera. And that helps drive these decisions. But if you do this in like a very like blunt way, that's okay too. But it's really, really important. And to give you kind of the punchline here, you're looking at 10 to 25% less cancellations, which is a huge number. And I knew you'd be skeptical of it, so graph, okay? This is about 8,000 companies. Every single time you have offboarding, much, much lower cancellation rate, much, much lower churn. Some people will churn the next month after the free offer, but like, that's okay. I'm trying to lower it. Sexiest topic in the world. You guys ready for it? I was gonna make an inappropriate joke, but we're in Utah, so I'm not going to, okay? Payment failures, the reason I joke about it, it is the largest single bucket of lost customers if you have a credit card-based product. You're collecting your payments through credit cards. There's 130 different reasons why credit card fails. I'm gonna go through all of them right now. I'm just kidding. We're not gonna go through any of them. But they're mechanical devices that are subject to failure. And so what happens is you're thinking, why would this ever happen? Visa obviously wants money, and they do, but the problem is they're mechanical devices subject to failure. And so when we look at the data, and you don't really get the benefit of size, is all of a sudden 20 to 40% of your lost customers, you lose 100 customers, 20 to 40 of them are because of payment failures. You might be sitting there and you're like, well, can't we get these folks back? Yes, but your product team is not thinking about this, because they're like, hey, features, features, features. They're not thinking about, hey, this is a huge problem. Finance sees it, no one wants to fix it. There's a lot of things you can do, but most companies that we found can double their recovery rates. Depends on your size, your scale, who you're selling to. And there's a bunch of different things you can do. I don't have time to go through all of them, unfortunately. But the basic idea is there's a lot to be gained here because it's a purely mechanical problem. That's why I think it's one of the sexiest churn topics. It's not like you have to like think of value, you don't have to think of anything. You're gonna have some people who are gonna like this is their way of canceling, but for most folks, you can get your recovery rates between 60 and 80%, which is really, really cool. All right, you guys wanna talk about pricing? Yeah, you fired up? Okay, I'm gonna take you through the history of pricing because Dave said I could talk for an hour and a half. Just kidding, Dave just got sweaty. I can feel it in the back of the room there. Okay, I wanna take you through a little bit of like, from a starter pricing, like the first pricing page at a company, or a rate card if you're not putting it on the page, all the way to like the best pricing folks in the world. What are they doing at their companies? It normally starts with very meager beginnings. And those meager beginnings typically involve essentially like one particular plan that all of a sudden like doesn't have like a good price point, right? And then it evolves into good, better, best because you read a Harvard Business Review article and you're like, I'm a genius, right? I'm gonna have 3 tiers, right? And then it evolves into more and more and more. And we're not gonna be able to go super, super deep here. I feel like I oversold a little bit just now. But some of the best folks in the world use add-on strategies to the extreme. What I mean by an add-on strategy is you got your like 3 tiers here, and then you're like, oh, maybe Walmart wants to talk to us. Let's add an enterprise plan, right? And you're like, let's go. But you put all this stuff into these particular plans, and then if you're not tracking what's going on with engagement data, you start to realize like, oh, there's these features that are used by less than 40% of the people in those tiers. And those are really, really good candidates to pull out and basically make into add-ons, right? Because now I can sell them to the entire customer base. I don't necessarily have to sell them just like straight embedded into a particular feature or product, right? The other thing you can do, or to give you some data here, lifetime value is typically about 20 to 50% higher for customers who have at least one add-on. The reason for this is not just because they're paying you more, but they retain at a much, much higher rate, right? So when you're looking at your pricing and you're having that uncomfortable conversation where all these really smart people are in a room, but no one wants to make a decision, right? Here's something you can be like, hey, let's think about add-ons, right? To give you some perspective, the fastest growing SaaS companies, they have on average about 8 to like 12 different add-ons. Those are 8 to 12 different features. No customer sees all 8 to 12 in their entire lifetime, but it's something super powerful. Upsells and cross-sells. Fun fact, average number of tiers that the fastest growing SaaS companies have is 18 plus. Subscription mobile apps, it's 13 plus for the fastest growing companies. And the reason I bring this up is because there's this like weird, oh my God, it needs to be simple. And it should be simple to each individual lead or customer that you talk to. But over time, like not all of your customers are created equal, right? There's all types of different segments that you're selling into. And so make sure you have those tiers in the back end. Don't limit yourself by your rate card or your pricing page. Limit yourself by what is the order of operations on how someone has quoted their price over the lifetime, whether it's product-led growth or it's enterprise. Make sense? Start talking about pricing. I felt like I lost you guys there. Made me really sad. Most important thing, this is the one that I think is very good for customer success people to harp on, because it makes your job easier, especially if you have a quota. It's a value metric, and a value metric is how you charge. So up to $500 a month per whatever, whole host of different ways that you can do this. The reason that it's so powerful is it bakes growth into how you make money, directly into your pricing. And the reason is because not everyone's created equal, so you have some people who use 10,000 seats, you have some people who use 1 seat, and you can serve every single one of those people. How much growth? You're looking at year-over-year growth rates in this yellow. By the way, since we sold, our brand colors changed to this yellow, and I hate it, so I'm embracing it so much, just so you know. That's why it's so much yellow. But you're looking at year-over-year growth rates for those companies using value metrics versus those who are using differentiated feature pricing. And differentiated feature pricing is going just away. When I started ProfitWell, there was like 8% of companies using value metrics. Right now, we're at like 60% of companies using value metrics, so this is the way to price. It's a really good way to look. But the reason that this growth comes is because your churn is much, much lower. I'm not paying for 100% of this particular product and only using 30%. I'm basically paying for exactly what I'm using, so you will have more downgrades, but you'll have less churn. And then the thing that's really, really relevant to you is expansion revenue is much, much higher. Because think of it this way, right? You're trying to go upgrade someone and you're like, there's this cool feature in the next tier. Do you like want that integration? Like I'm gonna sell you this next integration. Instead of having that conversation, that's how I sell things, by the way. It's exactly how I sell things. But instead of having that conversation, I can just go to you and I say, hey, congratulations. This is amazing. You guys have 30 seats now? That's amazing. I'm just gonna bump you up to the 30 tier plan. And if you have any questions, let me know, right? It's just an implicit based on the metric that you and the customer agreed to. And the way to set these, first think about what your perfect value metric is. So HubSpot marketing, it's like the amount of money that you make through using HubSpot. If you can measure that and your customer agrees to the measurement, you have what's called a perfect value metric. Only about 8% of SaaS companies can use this. Retain, we're able to use this because we charge based on how much more money we bring you, based on how much we lower your churn. It's one of those things that's great when you can have it. But for the rest of us, what are the 5 to 10 proxies for that particular perfect metric? So for HubSpot, it's like number of contacts, number of users, et cetera. And then you're gonna go collect some data, and you're typically gonna break it down to one primary value metric, and then maybe a secondary metric. When you look at a pricing page that's got like 5 or 6 of these metrics, normally it's someone just hasn't parsed through and been like, what is the primary one? Because normally one is like a proxy for all of them. And then the other thing to just think about is if you have a technical buyer, you can typically get away with a little bit more here. All right, pricing messaging. Who here has ever done a price increase? How did it go? Wow, it went bad. Anyone have a good one? There we go, confidence, I like that. That's awesome. Here's how to do a really good price increase, or any change. First, don't legacy your customers. I know this room wants to legacy customers because you know Jane and Brandon from whatever company you have, and you're like, I don't want to charge them more, but Jane and Brandon know that things cost money, okay? They understand things cost money, and if you've done your job and improved the product over time as a company, you can charge Jane and Brandon more. I have a very specific customer in my mind when I think of Jane and Brandon, which is kind of weird to discover that right on stage here. But don't legacy your customers. I think it just caps your growth. It's a really cute idea when you're starting out, and then all of a sudden you're like, crap, how do we grow? Well, we have this base of people who like us, like we should charge them more. You gotta do your research though. I'm not gonna be able to get deep into this. You really have to understand where your pricing power is. And the first time you're doing this, it's a really big problem because someone pulled $100 a month out of their bum, previously, and that's what you've been with price for like 6 years. And then all of a sudden you go and do your research and people have never heard of you or are willing to pay $1,000 per month. And you're like, the data must be wrong, right? And you're like, yeah, but you've never collected data and you just pulled this out of the air. So of course your customers are anchored, right? So instead, we want to understand where we can go. Do an impact analysis though. So people with like a greater than 50% increase, you normally want to treat them a little bit differently. And then the messaging is really, really important. Do not copy this. Copy the concept. You're going to ruin it for everybody if you copy this, okay? First thing I'm going to do, over the past year, we have added so much value for you. We've made this much money, you have this many contacts, you've used us this many times, some sort of database metric that I can bring into the email. There's this new feature we launched 6 months ago, and then there's this feature you use every single day. You're reminding them of how valuable the product is to them. We're gonna tell them we're gonna increase the price, but we're gonna do it by saying, we're investing in making this product better for you. It's about them, it's not about you. It's always a shock, doesn't matter how much they love you. So I'm gonna go, but because you've been so loyal to us, because you've been the perfect customer for the past 4.5 years, we're gonna raise prices on all those non-loyal people, all those people who haven't used the product, but for you, because you're special, we're gonna give you your existing price for the next 6 months and it's worth this much. We're giving you $800, right? That's the perception you want, and obviously I'm hamming it up a little bit for effect here, right? And then of course, if you have any questions, let us know. We're excited to be a part of your mission, right? My favorite thing to do, P.S., if this materially impacts your business, let us know and we'll work something out. It's for 2 types of people. It's for people like me who don't want to pay for anything. But when I see that, and I agree with you, hopefully, about your numbers, I'm gonna go, I'm not gonna cause a fuss, fine, right? My NPS will be a little lower next month, but fine, right? But it's also for people who are actually affected, right? They're gonna try to negotiate with you, and it's a wonderful brand opportunity to go, hey, Brandon, don't even worry about it. We'll talk to you in a year. Don't even worry about it. You get back on your feet and we'll be fine. So that's how to raise prices. It's not hard, it's a process. All right, last thing before Dave kills me. Okay. You need to be a good executive, or a good leader if you're not an executive, or you just need to be good, okay? And I know we've had a number of presentations talk about that, but I think it's really, really important because I think the central nature of what you do is such a great opportunity for you just to rise to the top of your leadership team. And what I mean by that is you need to have operations excellence. And alignment is everything. And I almost guarantee you, I've seen inside enough companies, I almost guarantee you your alignment is terrible at your company or just not ideal. And we discovered this as a bootstrap company a while ago because we were like, why is everything terrible? And it's because people were like, I don't know what's going on. We think, especially founders, and I'm just gonna give you a founder perspective, we think up and to the right. This is our mission. We're gonna democratize this thing. We're gonna grow this thing, right? And then we hire people and we're like, of course they'll get the mission because I'll just like tell them, right? I'll just explain it to them. And then we'll hire more people and then like I'll just explain it more to them. Like I'll have like that one like 3-minute conversation inside an all hands. And then we'll hire some people that like are off the beaten path, but I'll go find that person and talk to them. And then like, that's George, he just wasn't good. And so like, I'll let him go, right? This is how founders think about this. It's stupid. Don't worry, I'm a founder, I could say that. It's totally stupid, right? Because what reality really looks like is this, right? You got the product team being like, we're going after that customer. Marketing is like, we should get this customer over here. And then you're like, why is this so chaotic, right? And the reason it's so chaotic is that your team, your company probably hasn't defined alignment and mission as much as it should. And what I like to do is I like to run this type of a framework. The first thing is, what's the mission? And it's a very, very, very deceptively simple. This takes a lot of time to get to just the one sentence that's up here, right? And for us at ProfitWell, is we exist to grow subscription revenue automatically, and then we establish what's known as a mission metric. The mission metric is that metric goes up over time. We've aligned the entire team, and we're just really cooking with gas. Now from there, you have to have guiding principles of how you're gonna get there. For us, it was, we're gonna do it for you. So all of our products, all this churn stuff I'm talking about, you will not see a WYSIWYG editor in any of our products because we do it for you or we let the product do the work. You don't have to think, you just turn it on. That's the thing that we thought about. That's where I think the future of a lot of products going. And the second thing was, we wanna be the most helpful brand in SaaS. So if you've seen ProfitWell content, you know like we're always talking about this, we're trying to help, hopefully you found this helpful. That's part of it as well. And then each team had to put together what is their framework or what is their guiding principles to achieve this particular company mission. And then one of the most important things is how we're gonna get there and what is the expectation of what I call tempo. For marketing, so for us, it was like content. How much content are we publishing? What is going on? And what this does is it provides alignment not only from on high, but it also sets really clear expectations of what my boss or my boss's boss or whoever you end up being, what should they expect out of you? And the reason that this is so critical is because everyone's reacting. Everyone's reacting to a quarter, we have to raise the next round of funding. If you have this, you at least can be like, hey guys, let's establish the mission, and then your team can be looking really, really good in the context of that mission because so-and-so in marketing, I don't know if there are any marketers here, they're never gonna have their stuff together. No, I'm just kidding, they will. But this is really, really important for your team, and I would argue the company overall. And this is something you can lead the initiative really, really easily, and you should, because you can be like, well, I know the customer, and you're like, yeah, the customer's the center, right? Let's do that. It's how high-performing teams become high-performing companies. That's what's really, really important. All right, how we feeling? We got value? All right. My Netflix special is complete, great. This stuff's hard. Like, I'm speaking about it really linearly. You guys are in tough spots, I think, on your particular teams. If you have a leadership team that adores you, fantastic. You should still do a lot of this stuff because they'll adore you even more. But it's one of those things where like, you gotta cuddle with the chaos. You gotta keep moving forward. You gotta make sure that you're making those incremental gains as well as those strategic gains as you kind of push stuff forward. So I'll be around if you have questions. It's my Twitter handle, it's my email address. We have so much data. If you have like a question on something, we probably publish something on some of the topics that we talked about, or have a video or something like that. But thanks everybody.